The worst part about it is that we learn to dislike ourselves if we hide behind our facade too much. And that's the part which I have the biggest issue with. I'm fine when people do whatever they do, as long as they love who they are in the essence. What I've noticed, and again, I can't reference any research, is that people who put too many masks up, or who have different personas, way too many personas, and they have to, and they are afraid to show their true self. Usually there is also a disliking of that true self somewhere behind that.
2, 1, 0.
Hi, and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. This is your host, Orion. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for improving your life and just being awesome. Today, we're going to talk about being flawsome. We're going to talk about healing, perfectionism, using your voice, overcoming self-doubt, and more with the extraordinary Kristina Mand-Lakhiani. She's the co-founder of Mind Valley, the world's most powerful life transformation platform with an ever-growing 20 million strong following. 20 million. 20 million. Wow. An accomplished entrepreneur, best-selling author, sought-after international speaker, talented artist, and committed philanthropist. Kristina is based in Estonia. Her first book, Becoming Flawsome, published by Hay House in July 2023, and instantly became a #1 bestseller. She hosts her own podcast, Honest Conversations, in the field of psychology and self-development. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Kristina. Welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ryan, for having me.
Yeah, wow. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you. Before we begin, can you tell me a little bit about your origin story? Where are you from, and how did you become this powerhouse that you are today?
I guess, nowadays the question where you're from is a little bit not as straightforward as it used to be. Currently, I'm sitting in Estonia, so we're having this interview with me being in Estonia. And I consider myself from this country. Although I was born in Belarus and I lived for a really long time in Malaysia. So that's the Big Bang theory of my life. But when we talk about more to the purpose of your question, I actually started my career in politics, and that was my interest in international politics. And to understand that interest, probably you have to know that I was born and I grew up in Soviet Union, and that was international politics, international relations was the only way to see the world. And I guess I was always curious, so that was the path that I chose for myself. But when we were students, we met with Vishen, who is the famous founder of Mind Valley, and we got married long time ago. But when we got married, I followed my husband, as was the custom of that day and time. And because I followed him to US first and then to Malaysia, my own career and my own plans, I just abandoned them, and I started discovering new passions in life. I ended up in Mind Valley a little bit by accident initially, and then it kept sucking me in deeper and deeper. And at some point, I realized that, I guess that's what I am interested in. It might sound a little bit funny because it feels like I'm just following the path, but the path which was not even my choice. But the truth is that now looking back, I'm a little terrified when I think of me being in international politics.
Oh, you would be a completely different person than you are today. Wow.
Yeah, it would have been different. I guess as a person, I would have been probably similar, but still, no, that initial path wasn't the thing that I ultimately would have liked to do.
Yeah, I think it was divine intervention because your teachings is all about being yourself and being genuine and showing up as your genuine self. And politics is a complete opposite. It's all about being proper and mask on top of mask and saying the right things and um yeah, completely two trajectories of your life. That's amazing.
Well, politics in the days when I started was a little different because Soviet Union collapsed and Estonia was new to the Western world, so it wasn't as rigid as, for example, if people who are listening are, for example, in US, the politics there has very long roots and very established traditions, although no, not everybody follows those traditions. But with that said, I also think that we are quite multifaceted people, or as my friend once said, multi-talented. So I was just today wondering about that whole idea that, we're often told we have to focus on something so that we achieve the pinnacle of mastery. But then the new school of thought is that we maybe should try different things and should experiment with other hobbies. I think I'm more of the school that we should try different things because we have so much and occasionally even contradictory in ourselves. So I wonder, I think you can be yourself and be very different.
In different things, yes. Yeah, possible, of course. Um, so you've been rubbing shoulders with like the best self-development gurus in the world. Do you feel like they are connected to their authentic self, or they have something to learn from you?
I think that's a very very politically sharp question. coming Considering that I'm a co-founder of Mind Valley, so we we work with a lot of teachers. I would say that we all have a lot to learn from each other, and not necessarily from gurus. Occasionally, some of my biggest teachers are called Eve and Hayden, and they're my children.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, mine too. My little one, like, I like, is my the biggest self development I have ever had in my life. Like, doesn't matter how many seminars I took. Like, this is like, he's my teacher for sure.
Well, we are invested in them, so it's not the same as just going around and playing transformation and personal growth. Here, you are face to face with reality. Either you change, either you grow, or you keep having the same problems. So I believe that some of the most trying people are also great teachers. The question is, do we have the framework to learn, or do these learnings come in the form of trauma that makes us maybe more closed and more afraid of experiences. Now, when it comes to teachers that I've worked with, and I have personally, of course, met most of the personal growth uh, teachers and authors and the big names. Uh, I strongly believe in the idea of the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So you usually get the experience that you expect from the interaction. And I can't say that I love all the teachers. There are teachers who do rub me the wrong way. But generally, I have noticed that it is up to you to get out of the interaction what you want to get. And it's very easy to go either way, to go and maybe adore someone without any dose of critical thinking or questioning, and it's as easy to go and dislike everything about someone. So I think teachers are just humans, just like everybody else. And one thing I can tell for certain, a lot of them have stories, just like every single one of us, everyday mundane stories um, about mistakes, about flaws, about imperfections. They all have their stories.
Yes. Because I had times in my life where I met my guru. They say don't meet your heroes. So I met many of my heroes that I was, I would have a conversation with them and felt like so full and alive. And a few of them, not a lot, I met them and it was draining, and it was very disappointed because I came with like a certain expectation for who the person is, and then it turned out to be maybe more self-serving or different. So when you are interacting with people, what type of expectations do you have?
Well, yeah, I'll answer this question, but first, probably I'll comment on that. You're right that not every teacher is exactly the same in real life as they are, let's say, on stage or in front of the camera, because there is such a thing. It's it's a trick, a professional trick as a stage persona. So there are some
Mhm.
people who are maybe more outspoken on stage, or a little bit more energetic, and not the same in real life. It happens.
Mhm. Yes.
Although I wouldn't write it off as lack of authenticity. I guess it's what helps them to do their work on stage.
Right.
The other aspect is that, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, but marketing is an important part of business, and personal
Mhm.
growth is also business. So, knowing how to sell yourself or self-serving yourself is part of your success. So, whether we like it or not, but most of the biggest, most famous names are very good at selling themselves, and they would be doing that even in settings where you maybe don't expect that, because that's how they became so famous. They grew their audience
Right.
by keeping business in mind. And then there are, of course, very inspirational, wonderful people who don't care anything about that, but then they might not be such famous names. So
Right.
it is probably part of the game. Now, when I interact with people, it depends on the circumstances more than anything what I expect from them, because I'm just a human. When it comes to work, of course, I try to be in the good shape, because it's work environment, and here you can put yourself together and put your best face. Because I have had experiences where a guest, I also do podcasts where I'm a host, so I kind of understand your position currently,
Mhm.
and the success of that depends so much on your guest and the way you interact with the guest. And I've had guests who have been very easy to interact with, whom it's easy to talk, and some guests who have been very demanding and trying and hard, and it is exhausting to keep working with people like that. But then I'm also human, and sometimes I interact with people not in the work environment, and there I can be both in my good mood and friendly, and I can be also moody and not in a good mood. It happens.
Me too. Oh yeah, yeah, me too. Like I take responsibility for myself too. Obviously, like some days I feel different and I'm not in my like best self, and that can affect the absolutely like cuz yeah, it takes two to tango for sure. I was just curious about your view of it because you really are like at the top of the top, working with the top of the top. So I was very curious about that.
It's it's interesting because it's the top of our very narrow niche. I'm now applying to universities because I also value academic background to everything that we do, and I think
Nice.
again, it's a tango here as well between your intuition and what you feel, and what actually has been well, maybe researched a little more in depth. And to be honest. Yes, it's the pinnacle in one very narrow niche. But if we talk about the science of life, or the understanding of life, then there is so much. And I just recently started doing book club, and I discovered that the book authors is a completely different breed of authors compared to the speakers who we
Wow.
work with mostly. So it's a huge universe, and there are still constellations that I haven't visited yet.
Beautiful, yeah. It's like it's very sweet because you come across as very humble. Like you know where you are, but you understand that there is more constellations. That's beautiful. Really
You
nice.
know, I told you I'm not very good at tooting my horn. That's probably the reason before we started,
Yeah.
because you have to be aware. I mean, I absolutely admire people who can come across very confident, and you can't argue with them. You're like, okay. But on the other hand, there is it's good for business for sure. But on the other hand, there is a very slippery slope called delusion,
Mm,
and yeah, it's a dance. Everything is a dance. Life is a dance.
I like that. I actually use the same metaphor. I see life as a dance. I like that. Do you dance?
I love dancing, but I guess when I talk about life as a dance, I mean couple dance, because when you dance, you can move in any direction. But when you're talking about classical dancing, why I like this comparison is because dance doesn't have a direction per se. It's you move forward, you move backwards, you move sideways. That's why I like this analogy rather than, let's say, marathon.
Then you spin, spin, spin. So how did you find your voice on this journey from politics to self development? How did your teaching kind of like was downloaded to you?
It's a process which keeps happening because there are different roles when we talk about the voice. I guess being opinionated and outspoken, I have always been, but it's initially it was more within my private circle. Then I found my voice on Russian market because for a long time I was the face of Mind Valley in Russian language. I'm not talking about Russia as a country, but more Russian language, which is spoken actually in many countries. And that probably was professionally my first experience of finding my voice. At some point, I discovered that that wasn't completely my voice because being the face of Mind Valley in a different language, I was more of a like a loudspeaker or a translator. So convey converting someone else's voice into a different language. And it was when I discovered myself on English language stage when I realized that the only thing I can talk about here is my own worldview, my own perception, my own teachings. And that's where I realized that there is more to a voice. There's a voice about being decided and opinionated. There's a voice about being professionally at some point, at some level. And then there's a voice where you actually combine those two, the professional experience and your opinions, and you actually come up with something new, something that didn't exist maybe in the world. But then later I discovered that there was another voice which wasn't very loud for a really long time, the voice of me as a woman. And here I'm talking from a very specifically feminist point of view, because you see, I mentioned I didn't make any disclaimers, but I did follow my husband when we got married because that was the world in which I lived. Lately, I've been questioning a lot the decisions that I had made before, where I had chosen someone else's agenda over my own personal needs and desires. So I'm still finding a lot of parts of my voice. I guess it's a work in progress.
That's beautiful. I like the differences of finding your voice as a just being on stage in front of the Russian crowd, and then finding your voice as your authentic voice, and keep finding your voice within the revelation of your life and the reflection. It's really awesome. I love that. And finding your voice as a woman and what is a woman, that's a whole new story. And that's like a dance too. That's very flexible and changing, and there is no one definition to who you are, who can you be as a woman, right?
Yes, I guess part of the reason why that voice has become more prominent is because my daughter is now 11. When kids are small, they're a little bit, uh, you know, um, of course they have gender, but we are not as dominating over their well preferences. But as she's growing, I'm noticing how this gendered agenda is being translated to the children, even in our day and age. So I guess it's just a little more important currently for me because my daughter is growing up.
Yeah. That goes back to like our teachers, like our biggest teachers can be our kids or somebody down the street or even our parents. Um, so it's interesting because when I laid my eyes on my notes that are here in front of my computer, it said using your voice. And exactly when I looked at that, you said that. I was like, wow, she's psychic. That's awesome. Do you feel like you have psychic abilities?
Have some. I'm not focused too much on developing them. I've experienced them, and since there is very little. How to say there is a school that actually helps you to develop psychic abilities to a practical level, because I believe that the abilities are good when you can practically use them. But I do know that I have very strong intuition and I trust it. It's just that I'm also a perfectionist, so sometimes I'm trying so hard that I'm in the way of my own psychic abilities or
Yeah.
intuitions. Usually when I relax and just let go, it comes across stronger. But I'm not researching that too much. There are teachers that I think are good, and I don't
Yes.
dismiss it as non-existent, but I do not use it. How to say? I can't rely on it very much because I haven't developed these abilities to be practical.
So what is connection to your intuition means to you? How do you connect?
As a mother, of course, you experience intuition, but I generally mostly rely on it in relations to myself, with myself. So, for example, if we take myself and my body, and I would consider my body as like an object or a separate unit, then in that relationship, I do trust intuition a lot. And and as I said, as a mother, but because I do not research the topic too much, it's just more like an occasional surprise every once in a while. Like today, I had a few experiences where I thought of someone or something, and it showed up on my phone quite a few times back to back. So I was thinking, okay, that's an interesting that's an interesting streak of psychic abilities.
Yeah. Today before I came here, I was kind of late. I usually arrive a little earlier before the interviews, but I was just like running in the door like 5 minutes before our interview, and I'm kind of like rushed, and I was able to put my makeup on and be like, "Oh, look at me! I was here for an hour." No, I wasn't. Um, but I took I took a taxi, and I saw like there was something on the road, like a big rock thing, and I looked at it, and like there was something in me that said, go move it. But it was kind of a busy street. I didn't feel like doing it. And then the taxi arrived, and guess what? The moment it pulled out, you hear something stuck under the taxi. And then it like that's why I was late, because it took a while to figure out what it was. I kind of knew what it was, but then he went down, and like is I mean, the poor guy was like his hand was bleeding, but he was so kind. It was like, oh, don't worry about me. I was like, oh, I got a band-aid here. He was a very sweet guy, but we were late a little bit to come here. But yeah, like I knew it. I had the sense of like, go move that rock from the road. I didn't do it. Sometimes and like I was just lazy. Yeah.
Things happen. I'll probably share a story which I sometimes share. When my son was younger, I was going to Amazon with him, and it's a very remote area with very little connection to the outside world. So, as a mother, I was worried about appendicitis. So I called my doctor and I asked about all the symptoms, so that if it happens, I warned and can act quickly. Of course, we traveled there and nothing happened. But about a year or two later, somebody called from my son's school, and they said I have to go pick him up very quickly because he's sick. And the moment I saw him, I knew it was appendicitis, because earlier I
Wow.
had asked for symptoms, and it was. They did this surgery, and everything is fine, of course. But
Wow, amazing.
for years after that, I was wondering what was at play. Was it my motherly intuition that warned me that I should know what it is because it's going to happen? Or was it the reverse, where I was so paranoid about it that I actually called it upon my son? So with that kind of things, that's, I guess, what I'm saying is that I do not know how to use it practically, unfortunately. I have had experienced both intuition and psychic abilities. I know there are really good teachers. I have actually also taught silver method, which, yeah. So I get it, but I personally, for me, it's more a party trick currently, because I do not know how to use it when I need it. But when I hear it, I try to honor it. And I've had cases where I feel so uneasy that I would cancel something without knowing, why am I so uneasy? And I never got the proof that there was a reason to cancel, but at least I feel I do trust when my intuition says don't do that.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So, in your process of finding your voice, did you have to go through some healing journey or healing some um, epigenetic family patterns or something like that?
So I'm very, I'm the nerdy co-founder of Mind Valley, very very academic and pragmatic. Well, because I was brought up in Soviet Union, so I usually don't dig deeper than my own experiences. That's
Mm,
when we talk about epigenetics, or let's say relationship to the family. I do have huge respect for my ancestry, but in a very different format.
mm,
But when it comes to finding my voice or healing, actually healing is probably more important part. I think healing is not a degree in university. It's not like you've healed and now you get a certificate and you can go and live your life happily ever after. For me, healing is more akin to personal hygiene, because we do get bruises and knocks and occasionally even wounds as we live, because that's part of life. If you have anything meaningful in life, usually it comes with a degree of danger that it will bruise you or hurt you. So healing is something which we have to do on a regular basis. Like we wake up in the morning, we're full of energy, we live our life, and then in the evening we need to go and rest. So healing is the same. It's like living experience, healing, living experience, healing. And of course, it keeps happening to me. When it comes to finding my voice, sometimes it is as a result of healing, sometimes it is as a result of thinking,
mm,
sometimes it's a result of letting go, and then your intuition is in play. And sometimes it's a result of actually putting more effort. As I said, it's a dance, and the dance moves don't always go in the same direction. And I think that's the beauty about life. There is no one recipe for every single situation. And like with the dance, you have to hear the music, see your environment, and listen to your partner.
I love that. Um, do you feel like now that you found your voice, you do you still care about what other people think, or you had to heal that too?
I do care about what other people think. Uh,
Me too. Wish I didn't.
it doesn't mean that I would always do things considering what other people will think as the first, let's say, factor in me making decisions. Probably not. And also, there are degrees. Like, I care about my closest family because I care about their well being. And in that aspect, of course, I care what they think. That is not to say that I wouldn't do an unpopular decision if I have to, uh, but I will still care about them being hurt or disagreeing with me. It's just that it doesn't mean that I will change my mind if I think that this is the right decision. A very simple example would be, when you have to, when you have to discipline your children, right? They might not like it, but you have to do it, and that's a very simple example. There are degrees of complexity to that situation. I do care about what my closer circle thinks, as in friends, colleagues, partners, maybe even, you know, uh, podcast hosts, podcast guests. I do care about what they think. Like every human being, I want to be liked. I want to leave people with a good experience. Again, if we disagree, there is there are choices to be made. Do you want to disagree respectfully and still try to make it a good experience, or do you disagree and you feel that there's disrespect? In that case, of course, certain emotions will be triggered, and you might dislike an experience as much as the other person does. And then there is, of course, the wider public, and I do care what they think, of course, but unfortunately, a lot of the times we have, well, we never have control over what other people think. What I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the times people don't even have time to form their opinions properly. And a lot of the times you have to choose to be misunderstood because your values are more important than what other people think. But do I not care about that? I do.
So when it comes to building a brand, um, how do you like? What tips would you have for going with your truth, even if it's not the popular vote, or even with an image? Like right now, I'm choosing. I'm doing a rebrand for this podcast because it's been running for a long time, and I'm choosing between two images. One that is the proper and everybody's saying this is the right one, and the other one that is a little extreme, and I'm like, wow, I kind of like that one. And even my closest circle, they like the other one, but I like that one. So going with my truth and being more bold with my marketing and how I present myself. What will be some tips to doing that, or branding in general?
So the classical answer to that question would be that, if you don't shape your brand is going to shape you. So there is a brand out there, whether you have consciously decided and gone in that direction, or it just happened to be, it has become a brand then. So
Mhm.
that's the classical answer to this question. Now, another way to look at it is that there are different businesses and different ways to do business, and different people make their choices based on their own values and what is important to them. So in my case, I'm a very lazy person. And because I'm a lazy person, I prefer to be authentic because this is the easiest thing to do.
The last thing I would think about you is being lazy.
Oh, yes, I am. And I'm proud of that. Because there are benefits to that. Of course, that doesn't mean I don't work hard occasionally,
No, you do,
but
yes.
if I can optimize or delegate, or not do unnecessary moves, I will do that, because that's less effort. And actually, if we are a little nerdy, then our brain does the same. Actually, our brain really loves shortcuts and simplifying things.
Mhm.
So look at lazy not as in slob who is sitting in pajamas
No,
in front of.
yes, yes. You just you optimize things. You don't need to work so hard to get to the same result. You work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, from that point of view, the easiest thing to do is just be yourself. Then you don't have to try to be something else. That doesn't expend an extra effort. Now, I actually like a illustration of that. There was a scene in X-Men, X-Men First Class, I think. The movie is called, and there is a scene between Mystique, who's played by Jennifer Lawrence, and there is a scene with Magneto, I think is his name. I don't remember. So if you look it up, it's a really beautiful scene. She's I think in the gym doing something, and she's in her Mystique form. Sorry, she's in her blonde girl form, which is not her natural shape, but she's in that shape so that she doesn't shock the people. And then Magneto kind of manipulates the machinery so that it falls, and in the moment of need, she transforms into her blue spiky whatever form she is, her natural form. And the point of that scene, Magneto tells her that, you're wasting too much energy trying to be something which you're not. Why don't you embrace your natural shape? Because that energy could be used on something much more important, or in that particular context, it could save your life. So that's my logic. That's why I choose to be what I am. But then again, I'm also not as big on, say, social media as some other authors who might have taken other decisions, because there are a lot of authors, a lot of examples of authors from the end of the 20th century where speakers were taught to be in a certain way because that was the way that was selling. In fact, if you look at the old sales scripts, which were very much to the dot, to the last word, how you have to present yourself, how you have to smile, how you have to stand, how many times you have to knock on the door, all these things, because there is also a theory that there is an optimal way to do that job, and some people choose that. I think a notable example of that would be Harv Eker, and he's an amazing teacher. I actually have huge respect for him.
Yeah, I know his daughter. I met his daughter a few times.
And a lot of people, because Harv doesn't like to work as hard right now, but he has trained a lot of people to replace him. And if you have bad eyesight and you're sitting at the back of the room, you wouldn't even tell it isn't Harv, because they are clones of him. So there are choices to be made, and there are words to be told about every choice, because my choice is made based on my I do not want to waste energy where I don't think it's necessary. Harv's choice is made because this is optimal, and life has shown that this brings the best results. And, from the business point of view, it also makes sense. And I'm a businesswoman as well. And sometimes I do things which I know I have to do or follow the script, because that's how you make money. So I wouldn't frown upon either choice you make. And I don't think that, let's say, and I'm sorry that I'm using Harv as an example, but it's a positive example. I don't think he's any less authentic in that shape or form. That is him. Maybe in private life he's different, but as I said, just because somebody has a stage persona doesn't make them any less real. just as real. He's a teacher there, and maybe at home he's a parent or a husband, and we do play different social roles. And you as a podcast host or as a teacher and as a parent are probably also quite different personas.
Absolutely. Yeah, I understand that. There is on one hand you don't want to invent the wheel, on the other hand you want to be your authentic self, and one day I learn. One day I'll understand what being my authentic self mean. I mean, I'm trying.
But
Um,
the people who will be left in the how to say, who will be remembered later in history are the ones who are not the clones of everyone else.
right. Yes.
That's so I'm reading Marcus Aurelius right now because I was just curious about the origin of Stoicism, with which I have huge issues. But that side story apart, I was thinking, this guy. He was active 2,000 years ago, and of course he references certain philosophers and people of his time. And I was wondering how interesting it is, because when we live in this time, there are certain celebrities, people who are very successful, who have a lot of money, who have a lot of maybe followers, and we think that this is it. Then it usually takes 100, 200, 500 years later when the true gems stay on the surface and everything else is forgotten. Now, if we think 200 years ago, for example, Jane Austen, one of my favorite authors, she wasn't famous, popular, or rich when she was alive. She became what she is right now later. The history kind of sieved through all the material that was available in her time. So the same will be true about us. And maybe the people that we think are on the top of it will be just the husks. Yeah, they were famous and rich, but it's the unique, the unusual, the ones who will change the trajectory of the conversation, who will be remembered by history. But we will never know that.
I love that. That's beautiful. I never thought about it like that. That's super cool. How do you find your uniqueness, your awesomeness, your special,
It's not hard
special
to
something?
find. It's hard to be at peace with it.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. That. Yeah, okay, yes, maybe that. How do you become at peace with that? Yeah, how?
I just get so tired that I give up. It's like holding on for your dear life, and then your hands like shake and your fingers start hurting, and then at some point you just let go, and then you suddenly discover that you're flying. I guess that's the thing. I've
Wow,
noticed that
that's beautiful metaphor. I love that. Yeah.
it works all the time. I'm perfectionist. I find it hard to live like that, but it is just part of me, and I keep reminding myself to let go. But I usually learn it the hard way when I get so exhausted trying so hard to make it all work that I just say, okay, whatever, and then things fall into place. So the same with my uniqueness. You hide it, and then at some point you're like, no, it can't be hidden anymore. And then you just learn. The way I said, I'm lazy, I used to be afraid to say that phrase because people have so much dogma around it, but it is part of who I am, and it makes me
Mhm.
unique, and that has also shaped a lot of my decisions and my choices. But it is also a gift. A gift if you can learn to embrace it and not to villainize it.
Yes, because I mean, there are so many people in the world, and there are so many opinions, and somebody will be attracted to a facade, and somebody will attracted to who you are, and it's much easier to live your life as who you are than holding on to a facade for dear life. It's too much.
Which, the worst part about it is that we learn to dislike ourselves if we hide behind our facade too much. And that's the part which I have the biggest issue with. I'm fine when people do whatever they do, as long as they love who they are in the
Mm.
essence. What I've noticed, and again, I can't reference any research, is that people who put too many masks up, or who have different personas, way too many personas, and they are afraid to show their true self. Usually there is also a disliking of that true self somewhere behind
Mm.
there.
Yeah. Yes. I used to live in Japan, and in Japan I used to wear really fun items like fun belts and colorful clothes, and I mean all like not extreme Harajuku kid type of style, but really fun. I had a really cute style back then. And I went to New York to study acting, and everybody there were like black and sweats and simple. So I really stood up. And with my accent too, I really stood up. And so I tried everything to be like everybody else, where I start like all those fun items when were just in the closet. I was wearing sweats and black shirts and working really hard on my accent to fit in and to and then I figured out that this is not the way to be. And it doesn't matter how much I will try to fit in, I'll never be like them. I'll never have this like perfect American accent or their American history, whatever. Like I'll never fit in. I'll always be me. And so for me, it was a process of self discovery. And I feel like the process of self discovery never ends because you always find new things about yourself till the day you die.
And hopefully also change as we live. We have experiences. I think experiences are given for us to learn something. So if we stop changing, that would be pretty terrible.
Yeah, and boring for sure. So yeah, I had to learn to be myself again, and and that's it. I just learned that being a chameleon doesn't work, and trying to please people too much doesn't work. Of course, I still have like this part in me that is a pleaser, but now she learned to have more boundaries, and she learned more about who she is, and I'm in a much better place than I used to be.
I think this you just mentioned something which is also a controversial topic in a way. That pleasing. I live in Europe, and we do have a slightly different approach to civility here. So I think part of but sometimes we confuse just trying to be civil to each other with pleasing. Pleasing is when of course it's a matter of personal perception of what you consider pleasing, but I think part of pleasing is neglecting or betraying yourself.
Yes, erasing who you are in order to please someone or make them feel comfortable. Like, oh, don't play so big because they will feel threatened or uncomfortable. So let me shrink myself just a little bit more so to make everybody okay. But that never work.
But with that said, there is the other extreme where behind this idea of I refuse to be a pleaser, we start forgetting just simple things as respect and consideration of other people's feelings, and here because I've experienced that too, when people tell you something very unpleasant and then they say, "Oh, I'm just being honest," or I just refuse to please people. So I just want to put it on people's hearts that there's a difference between being civil and respectful and being a people's pleaser, because you can, with respect and civility, eject yourself out of the situation which you think is not benefiting you, without trying, to be unpleasant or teach anybody lessons. If anything I've learned over my life is that I don't want to teach people if they're not willing to to get a lesson. And
Mm,
sometimes it's so tempting to say something just so that oh, I just want you to become better.
mm.
I But yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with this whole thing, because on one side I get it, and it's a slippery slope. Also, when you're trying to be nice to people, you can occasionally be in a situation where you're wondering, am I just betraying myself currently? Yeah, I do not know why I went on that. Maybe I just came from London. We were doing exams with Eve, and yeah, it made me think about how nice it is to live in a world where people actually have respect for each other.
Yeah, yeah. It's a balance act, or a dance, like you say, where you have to know who you are. You want to walk your path. You want to be considerate, but not erase yourself so others will feel something. Because it never like you cannot make anyone feel a certain way about you. As long as you think connect to your heart and a genuine person and caring and loving, but still have boundaries and you know who you are, That's the work. That's the work. And sometimes you have to remind yourself every day. And when you come to a place where am I pleasing or am I kind right now, you'll always have the answer if you take a moment to just breathe and connect to your body and your intuition and be like, okay, now I'm good, or now I have to course correct, or this is what I choose today, and what I choose today does not mean I'm going to choose it tomorrow, but I always know that I have a choice. And my awareness is the key to the way I handle everyone and every situation. It's about intention and awareness.
And I think the key word you said is you know you can course correct, because it's okay to occasionally find yourself making a mistake, as long as you can eject yourself out of that situation and say, I'm not doing
Yeah.
that again. It's fine. And yeah, I can tell you, and that's experience of, again, no research, but that's my personal experience. A lot of very civil and polite people are actually pretty strict with their boundaries,
Mm,
and it's not a danger to stay nice to people, but remember what is important to you.
right. Yeah, I always like to be kind. I'm a kind person. I have a good heart. And I like to have people, feel good around me until they overstep, and then I'm not so kind. but overall I'm a really kind person, and that's how I want the world to be. I want this world to be a really nice, kind place so everybody will benefit from it.
It starts with being kind to yourself.
Yeah. Tell me more about that.
Well, yeah. If there is any pain out there, it's usually because we are not kind to ourselves. But it's a different conversation. It's a long conversation,
Yeah.
because we have to start with the. I've taught or I've talked about self love for many years, and
Hmm.
this is the one big question that everybody has is, what's the difference between self love and being selfish or self centered or egocentric. So it's not a very simple thing to answer. So yeah, it's basically what I wanted to say is that the world will be a better place if we learn to be kind to ourselves first. Uh, I guess. A very simple answer, and it will be a little bit of a leap because I will not bridge the gap between what I just said and what I'll say next. A very simple example is that we usually treat the world the way we treat ourselves. So, very often,
Mm.
when we are judgmental or critical of others, if you pay attention to your self-talk, you will notice that you're pretty judgmental and critical of yourself. Well, if you just look around, you will notice it's pretty much almost like a rule of nature. People who are patient with the world, they tend to be patient with themselves. People who are
Mm.
impatient with the world, they tend to be impatient with themselves. So that's why I keep saying that you have to learn to be kind to yourself. Once you learn to be kind to yourself, it will be so much easier to be kind to the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point. Yeah, the world is definitely a mirror, and the experiences in our life is usually mirrors of what we have going on inside. And that goes into we live in the matrix and we affect our reality and we create our reality. And that's a different conversation. But I want to know more about your book. How did you birth your book into the world? And maybe you can share a little bit about it.
It's like with babies, you carry it in your belly for forever, and then suddenly, whoo, it comes out. Well, I guess in my industry, it is almost like a must to write a book. So it was somewhere in my belief system that there will be a book coming.
Hmm.
But I also felt that I needed my own authentic message for that. And you're never ready. As I said, it's like with a kid. You're never ready for the kid. You're never ready for the book. But COVID helped along because we had a lot of time on our hands, less of other random movements, and I just sat down and did what I was planning to do. And also, I guess the message was ready and mature by then. But I never imagined what it was going to be. I just wrote a book because I knew I had to write a book. It was much later, when it was already done and even edited. The first round of the editing was done, and I was ready to start printing it when a friend of mine suggested that I look into traditional publishing. Now, when Hay House picked up my book and wanted to publish it, it changed the game, because when
Mhm.
I wrote a book, it was more like, you write a diary. The
Yeah.
same Marcus Aurelius that I was talking about, his meditations was his diary, and then it was published hundreds of years later as a book. So when I was writing my book, I wasn't thinking of it being published. When I started publishing it with Hay House, it became a completely different story. So it was a long path, and not very I don't want to say the word conscious, but it was almost like letting go and going with the flow, and seeing where that flow will take you. So that was my book path.
Beautiful. And what did you learn from writing that book?
That was a long process, and there was so many learnings along the way, both little practical things about myself and how I function, and about life. Because a lot of the things were, when I was writing, if I would write something, uh, like I just said, it's almost the law of nature that if we are patient with ourselves, it's easy to be patient with the world. If
Mm.
I wrote it down into the book, it would actually launch me on a path of trying to research, is there any research that proves that? So I guess one of the biggest learnings from that book was that I actually am very passionate about psychology as a science, as an academic discipline, not just popular psychology, the way the way we pass it from from mouth to mouth, but yeah, that nerdiness came out. I actually now applying to universities as a continuation of that experience. I do want to
Wow.
write another book, but meanwhile, after I had done my book, I started a book club by Mind Valley. Also a result of my own book journey. And this year I have read so many books in personal growth as a face of book club. And I've discovered that the things that I like about nonfiction books are quite peculiar, and I probably would have written my book differently after this experience. But I'm not ready for the second one.
Mhm.
For me, book is an ultimate form of self-expression, because this is something which has the potential of being left behind for the history.
Mhm.
But there are as many writers as there are as many different types of books there are books which are done for business, which are done for teaching purposes, for a lot of different purposes. For me, it's a form of self-impression. It's art.
I love it. And a lot of time we teach the thing that we have worked on or still working on. And you mentioned perfectionist a few times in today's conversation, and your book is becoming Flossom. so, so that's pretty beautiful.
Well, I believe that, considering how intensely perfectionist I am, I think I'm doing pretty well. So if you were to learn about letting go perfectionist, learn it from someone who's been there.
Beautiful, yes. And maybe you can share a bit about Mind Valley to the people that managed to not hear about it yet.
Well, yeah, Mind Valley is probably one of the world's biggest platforms for personal growth and transformation education. We mostly exist in the form of online courses. Well, not courses.
That are amazing. We're members, so love it. And we've been to some of the events too. Yes.
Yeah, and events. So events is a little bit more of a unique experience and not as accessible, because, of course, events have limited numbers, and also they are in a certain location. But majority of our 20 million following are actually online.
Wow.
So we have students. Yeah, we have students all over the world. And when I was doing my book tour in the southern states of US, in very obscure cities I didn't know existed before I went there, I discovered that yes, we have followers and students all around the world. But I guess the most accessible and the best way to interact with Mind Valley is to become a member. And when you become a member, you get access to I think 50 to 70 plus courses. I do not know the current number because they change as well. We take some courses down, we put new courses up. So we have a lot of courses in personal growth transformation everywhere, from very pragmatic disciplines like nutrition and exercise, for example, to much more spiritually aligned and maybe new age things like even intuition, manifestation, and things like that, and everything in between. Train your memory and optimize your brain and your psychological causes, relationships, everything. So
Yeah.
that's a very short description of what Mind Valley is.
Yeah, the courses are phenomenal. Like they're unbelievable, really incredible teachers. And
We are privileged to work with the world's best teachers, of course, because we've built the brand for a long time, and we have the platform. And in a way, maybe we are making it harder for teachers to create courses. You can still, as a teacher, you can have your live events, but in online space, we literally have the picks of the best.
so I actually studied personally with two of the teachers that are on your platforms. One is Marissa Peer and one is Sheila Kelly. Probably some more that I don't even know were on the platform. So really great teachers and amazing platform. How do you balance or dance between family life and being a mom to holding on to this business and developing it and doing everything that you're doing, and now you're going back to study, and how do you do all that?
Well, I don't balance. It's all life for me.
Mhm.
And of course, I'm speaking from a privileged position of being a co-founder and my own boss, of course.
Mhm.
But I try to create similar environment for people who work with me, in my team at least, because I believe that life shouldn't be a dichotomy between professional activities and your private life activities. I think it has to be God, I don't know if I can pronounce it properly. Symbiosis. It's- Forgive me if I butchered the pronunciation. English is my third language, but I do think that they have to be symbiotic, and it's not good either for your private life nor for your professional life if you constantly have to be in a battle between the two. And very often when we ask about the balance, it is the question of the battle. With that said, of course, when I'm at work, I tend to dive deep and be in that ampleur. So it is distracting, of course, if you are doing an interview and then you have a baby who wants to be breastfed. I get it. So there are situations where you have to compartmentalize these two things.
That's a word that is really hard for me. It took me like years to say it. Compartmental. I can't even say it. Yes.
It wants the tongue action, but it's good if you don't have to be so strict about these boundaries. But now I also have to acknowledge that there are a lot of different ways people earn money and express themselves professionally. And if, let's say, you work in the service industry, there is no way you cannot compartmentalize the two.
Yeah.
Uh, so as I said, I'm talking about it from privileged position, but I also have allowed a lot of things to happen, which maybe now I wouldn't have allowed. I have taken upon myself the duty of a responsible parent, fully responsible, where all the emotional load is on my shoulders, and it's occasionally too much for me.
Mm.
And I think the world has to start changing. There is research that shows that women do on average 4 to 5 hours more work during their leisure time compared to men. Yet we compare men and women professionally solely based on their professional performance, completely ignoring the fact that taking care of your family and house is also work. So I guess the rule that I have applied to myself right now is that everything is work. Everything
Mm.
you do requires certain effort. And some work I love. Like I was just with my daughter in London. She was doing exams to schools. It was hard physically and emotionally, but it is the work that I love, and I will do it because I love my daughter. And I love my work, professional work. And then there is some work which is a chore, whether it's doing laundry or writing reports professionally. But I recognize that everything is work, and these are hours, and this is effort that you put. And you, why it's important? It's because sometimes your body requires rest, and even if you haven't been active professionally, but you've been uh, torn into pieces in your private life because the holiday season is coming and you have to think of everyone and of everything, then that still means that you've put hours of work and your body needs rest and your emotions need rest. So I guess equalizing that, at least in my life, has helped me a little bit. But as a feminist, I must say that we as a society have to start changing. It's just unfair to women.
Yeah, and I like the reframe of seeing everything as equally important, which is something that not everybody see. Because it's really, really important. Like raising your kids is incredibly important. You're raising a human being. You are creating a world. And then you have your professional world where you're touching millions of lives, and they're both equally, or there is no comparison. They're both are things that you do that are really, really important to you, different levels, and there is no, you can't quantify like what's more important. Just you can.
When you are on the deathbed, I know which will be more important for you. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, society doesn't think of their deathbed. So there
Mm,
is a difference. One of those works is being paid for, the other
mhm.
one is being swept up under the carpet.
Right.
Uh, One of them is being accounted in the GDPs of the countries, the other one isn't. One of
Mm,
them comes with accomplishments and respect. The other one, unfortunately, comes with only the respect of your closest family, even if that. There's a huge injustice when it comes to that, unfortunately. So, as again, I am in a privileged position because I can afford that, but at least for myself, in my universe, I have equalized these two jobs. And just because one of them is not being paid doesn't make
mm.
it less important.
No, that's beautiful. And what are your three top tips to living a stellar life?
Oh, do the things that you love. Try to stick to that, I guess, because there's just too much stuff which you have to do, which you're going to hate. Maybe that very thing that I just said. Remember what will be important on your deathbed. We sometimes live pretending that it's not coming, and be kind to yourself.
That's amazing. And where can people find you and find Mind Valley and connect with the organization, take the courses, read your book, be in contact with you?
So my book is on Amazon. I do not think it's on the shelves anymore because it has come out a few years ago. Although, can you imagine? No, 1.5 years ago. Maybe in India it's on the shelves because in India it came out recently. But in Amazon you'll find my book. It's called Becoming Flawsome. I am a co-founder of Mind Valley, so you'll find me in Mind Valley. Alternatively, want more of me than Mind Valley Book Club. I'm the host of Mind Valley Book Club. There you'll get the nerdiness and the introversion of one part of Mind Valley. That's
Mm,
me. I'm the introverted nerd.
beautiful. And what's your biggest dream? Like, where do you want to see yourself in a few years from now?
I actually enjoy myself on this path, so I don't rush into the few years ahead. I'm quite at peace here currently, but I have a few projects that I really would like to see at like near their completion. One of them is I did mention that I respect my ancestry in a different way. I have an ancestral farm, which is my dad's family traces its roots back to that place to 1632 approximately, and I'm restoring the farm to become a museum. And there's a lot of land and animals, and I have become a hobby farmer and all of that. So this is the one project where I would like to see it in a more or less completed state. Other than that, I am enjoying the process too much to think about the end of it.
No, 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 no. And just like, what's the aspiration? That's very interesting information about the farm. Well, good luck to you. So thank you so much for being here. I loved our conversation. I'm sure everybody loved it too. I appreciate you. And yeah, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. And thank you for making the space so comfortable and warm and easy to open up.
Oh, thanks. And thank you, listeners. Remember to do the things you love. Remember what is the most important to you. What will be the most important to you on your deathbed, and be kind to yourself. This is Orion. Till next time.